we typically don't work with people who have a short-term mindset. So we're just straight up with them and say like, people come to us and they're like, yeah, let's see what we can do from 30 days. And we're like, this isn't going to work because that's not the game. You just have to have a long-term mindset and you have to be willing to invest in it and look at it as an investment. It's still insanely ROI positive if you look over a 12 to 24 month period. But I always like to tell people, you didn't get into business to get short-term results. You're in business because you're looking at a 5-10 year plus investment in your business. And so if that is the mindset and the theory, there's no difference here.
Welcome to another episode of the Ecommerce Traffic and Conversion Podcast with your co-hosts, Scott Brandley and myself, DJ Sprague. We're excited you're here because we have a special guest who will share blogging and content strategies for SEO to improve your organic traffic. And be sure to stay to the end because we're going to ask Steven the $1 million question, and he has some free, helpful assets for you. So stay tuned. And Scott, if you will, please introduce our special guest, Steven.
Hey, Steven, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Nice to be here.
So, Steven Schneider is the co-founder and CEO at TrioSEO, a blog writing agency that helps online businesses scale organic traffic and use their blog to generate qualified leads through high intent content. That's cool. So, First question, how did you come up with the name TrioSEO? It's a unique name.
Yeah, so that was name number 150 in the list of ideas. But there's three of us, so it was really easy. I mean, I have two other partners, and so that was kind of like the first, go-to. But it kind of also stems on the idea that, we believe that SEO and good SEO comes from, three main things: having a good team, having really good content, and just a quality system. So, if you can put those three together, you pretty much have a turnkey strategy at the end of it.
Makes sense.
Fantastic. And Steven has a really unique story about how he got into SEO. So would you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So back long ago in college, I was on the MBA finance fast track and was just kind of going to school because I knew that it's the right thing to do. And while having some classes with a friend of mine, he just kind of like subtly dropped that he was a business owner. And I was like, whatever. Yeah, I'm sure. Let's hear it. So he told me about SEO and kind of showed me that he was building these niche affiliate sites on the side and was already generating like upwards of $10,000 per month. And so by that rate, I was kind of sold and scrapped all means of being a good student, like obviously finished and got my degree, but went from front of classroom taking notes to back of classroom building websites during class, and quickly just absorbed every ounce of SEO that I could. And he and I started building sites, and we merged with one of his partners, different trio. Actually, that was the first trio, but we, flash forward, had about 40 different websites in our portfolio. We produced 300 to 400 articles per month and grew that to 7 figures. So it was a pretty wild ride back in the day. And now we're able to kind of use a lot of those lessons and kind of transfer everything I learned from massive blogging into high intent specialized blogging for all of our clients at TrioSEO.
Fantastic. And 2 questions. What year and what college was this?
This was 2018, and I went to Western Washington University up kind of in northern Washington State.
Okay, fantastic. So West Coaster.
Yep, born and raised.
All right, good for you.
Nice. So you talked about kind of your roots. What do you do different now? Like what's your approach to SEO today as opposed to when you started?
Not a lot, to be honest. I mean, everyone thinks that there's this magic secret sauce when it comes to SEO. And, what we've kind of put to the test and seen come true and true again is that it's just the same thing over and over again and kind of really honing in on the basics and doing the basics well. I think the difference nowadays is that there's even more of an importance around quality and transparency and trust across the site. And so when focusing on different components, looking at those metrics like your experience, your authoritativeness, your trustworthiness, and just making sure that people who come to the site are well aware who's writing the content, what is your authority behind what you're speaking to, and just knowing that it's not, some random blog, it's actually a brand and there's an author behind it. So, the basics are the same, but I think just upgrading the user experience and the transparency across the board.
So you say that as if like just in passing, like an experience versus a blog, but that's a really big differentiation. If you go to, there's a lot of places where you can get articles written for like $10, right, or less sometimes. And with AI, who knows, right? But the brand, putting something behind a brand, making it deliberate and strategic, makes a world of difference compared to a $5 or $10 article that's just plastered on a page.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the little things are overlooked, are low-hanging fruit that people can put on their site within minutes. So, an author bio, does it have a picture of the author? Does it have, a link back to their LinkedIn to show that they're a real person? What are some, accolades of that writer or even your brand? And so just example is like, if you were going to look at an article about diabetes or any other health topic, you'd hope it's written by a doctor. Where have they been published? What shows that they have the expertise to speak about this? And I don't think it's any different regardless of what industry or site you're looking at. I think that anywhere you look, expertise is expertise. And so we always try to align that back to the brand and try to ensure that readers are met with that trust immediately. And so that as they're moving through the article or moving through the funnel, that trust is built all the way through the end to where they may actually make that purchase or reach out for an inquiry.
So you're going to have to build some expertise on the topics. I'm sure you cover a lot of different topics, right?
Yeah.
A lot of different clients, a lot of different affiliate sites. You're covering a broad swatch of industries. So how does that work?
So we're pretty picky with who we take on as clients, not only from this fact that we want it to work out for them. Like, we're not going to take on a starter site in a finance niche. Like, you obviously need some authority behind where you're trying to rank and just making sure the strategy is realistic. But the content itself has to, like I said, resonate with that. So if we're in need of a writer, like, we'll go out and find a specialized niche writer. Like, we did that recently for a client of ours who's in the finance space. Like, when it comes to that sort of stuff, you can't really, guess your way through it. And so if it comes down to it, like, we'll find a writer and just kind of make sure it's a good fit. We'll run through sample articles, et cetera. But some of our in-house team, they weren't necessarily experts to begin with, but as you start writing content, 6-7 months in a row over the same niche, you develop this expertise. And so what we've kind of learned is that if you put writers on a site and they're good generalist writers, they actually can start to become a master in that area. And then as new clients cycle in the same niche, well, we already have a quote unquote expert on hand. So it just depends on the level of depth that is required per topic.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What about blogging today? Is it still relevant? You hear a lot of SEOs and a lot of buzz around, well, blogging really isn't as relevant today as it was 5 years ago. What's your take on that?
Obviously, I'm a little biased. I think it's still relevant, but I think at the end of it, there's a lot more to unpack outside of a random article generating top of funnel content. So the two main things that we like to speak to are, obviously including a mixture of funnel topics. So we're going to go after bottom funnel, we're going to go after mid funnel, and, specifically target that bottom funnel content first. But the other side of it is just the topical authority or, your general authority. So as you start developing more and more content and publish more content on your site, Google starts to pick up on that and starts to recognize you as a key player in that industry. And so you actually increase your chances of performing better with SEO the more content you have, because you can internal link that content and just start to show Google that, hey, I'm an expert on this space, so please show my content to more people. And they definitely react, accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a strategy that we use with our Q&A tool. Is we have our clients write a lot of answers to common questions, and then we link those to bigger articles and things. And more content, the better, especially when it's targeted and relevant. And it follows
exactly.
the eat. It follows eat, right?
Yep.
Like very, very important. So, what are your takes on AI? I kind of alluded to that earlier, but what are your takes on it, and how do you see that helping SEO?
I think it's a tool. I don't think it's a replacement. And I think that right now people are very antsy to see how quickly they can produce quantity instead of quality. And I think it's a pretty risky game right now. We don't publish any AI content. We don't even write AI content. Everything's 100% human written and human edited. But I think that people who are choosing to go down the path of AI content should be aware that that's a high risk. Google just came out with that algorithm update, and it was specifically to target spam content. And so not knowing where the line in the sand is drawn when it comes to AI content, we're kind of just like, okay, let's take a step back and see where the dust settles. But right now, like, we don't want to jeopardize our clients' content and their brand just to publish a few extra articles per month. So we'd rather play the slow, methodical, strategic, sustainable game than pump out a lot of content and then be penalized. So
Smart.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that update hurt a lot of people, even if they didn't have AI content, right? It was a pretty tectonic shift for a lot of websites that lost a lot of keyword rankings and a lot of traffic as a result. Of course, Google's always messing around, so you never know what they're going to do. But going on to the next kind of area, since we've talked about blogs and content, what are some of the big mistakes people make in writing articles?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that I've seen is that content is not presented in a conversational tone. I think that because we're people and, we're reading and writing to humans, people often overlook that. And so just like we're having a conversation right now, that's going to look and feel much different than if I sent you a handwritten message. And it's really hard to get good conversational tones across in blogs or any copy for that matter. But the easier you can convey a message as if I'm talking to you just like I am right now, the better that content is going to, stick with it. And they're easily going to digest whatever you're trying to get across. And they're just going to want to stay on the page longer. But if it has all this crazy jargon and it's complex and not fun to read, it's like, who wants to read that? So
conversational, engaging, easy. Okay.
Yeah, simpler is always better. I mean, Google appreciates when you can explain something at a 7th grade level, even though it's a complex topic. And who doesn't appreciate that if you're trying to learn something? So,
right.
What about length?
Length is definitely hit and miss. So it depends on the topic. And I think like all things SEO, it depends. But, we generally run for a 1,500 to 2,000 word average. Obviously, some are going to be lower and some are going to be higher. But at the end of the day, like, the content should be as lengthy as it needs to be. So we've ranked articles that are under 1,000 words. We've also ranked content that's 3,000 words. If it's like an ultimate guide, it should have more pieces of content, such as a pillar article. But if it's just an FAQ guide, it doesn't need 2,000 words to get the point across in 500-700 words. So
why do you still want a good writer to lead your SEO?
Yeah, so this is a hard one. This is something that we're constantly looking for good writers, because going back to that conversational tone, if you have a good writer who can convey that message easily and it's fun to read, it just makes that content across the board better. The other part of the kind of puzzle that most people don't think about is that once you have a customer and they are on your blog, or at least on your site and working within your brand, they're way more likely to come back to your content if they have something to refer back to and kind of like make that first impression really stick. So, once you have a good writer on your team, like, never let them go, pretty much.
Okay. How do you really screen a good writer, and what do you look for? What are some of the characteristics, skill sets, backgrounds, education, et cetera? I'm sure you do writing samples and all of that, but man, finding good writers that can engage people with, again, 7th grade level writing that's clear, concise, engaging, conversational. What do you look for? How do you find those people?
Yeah, the list goes on, right? You're pretty
This
much
goes
catching
on.
lightning in a bottle.
Right.
A lot of it's just based on experience. I mean, we have a great content manager, and he's read thousands of articles. He's written articles. Um, Usually, if you have a content manager or someone on your team who's doing quality assurance on your content, and you're hiring a writer, they should have a pretty good experience threshold themselves, so they can easily vet those writers. But we have an internal checklist, and we just kind of quickly run through that. That saves a lot of time. So it really kind of, like all those things you rambled off, if you can read someone's content and then draw back on those things, that'll help a lot. But also just trust your gut. Like if you read a piece of article or you read some content and you think it's bad, like you're probably not the only person who thinks it's poorly written. So, obviously keep in mind the, short to long laundry list of items, but also just like trust your gut. That's always a good fallback.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. For our audience, because SEO is, for a lot of people, they're really not sure what it is. It's confusing. They hire an SEO company or guy or whatnot, and they don't see results. They get confused about the metrics. They get confused about the goals. So could you share with us what are the common misconceptions about SEO, and how can people vet a good SEO firm or consultant or expert?
Yeah, so this is definitely really hard for people who are new to the space or just think it's witchcraft and don't know what SEO is. But kind of a lot to unpack there, so I'll try to be concise. But the first part is just like, what is SEO and the benefit of it? And so my favorite analogy is that you have to think of your website as a house, and it's a party, or you're hosting a party that everyone wants to go to. And so in this analogy, people are so willing to attend this party that they'll crash in through doors, they'll jump through windows, they'll do whatever they have to do to get in your house. And keywords on your website are those doors and windows. And so as you start to acquire more keywords on your site, you have more entry points through Google for people to find your content. So that's kind of like what we do, and we'll spin up content on service landing pages or blogs in order for people to organically find your site through Google. But when it comes to vetting an agency or a contractor, they should have a lot of experience and have a lot of proof behind their belt, behind what they did. Like I just explained my story and my upbringing using SEO. My partners, Connor Gillivan and Nathan Hirsch, they grew and exited FreeUp from 5K investment to 12 million ARR. And that was purely through SEO. They didn't do any, like paid ads, nothing else. So, speak to how we've done it in the past, how we can replicate that time and time again. And just kind of, vet that experience. It's really funny because we've talked to a couple of people and they tell us, you're the first SEO agency I've seen with good SEO on your website. And that's just so backwards to me, because I assume that if you're doing SEO, you should have a good website and know how to optimize your website. But it's not the case. And so, like I said, kind of trust your gut, follow the experience, and see if they actually are doing that, or if they just took a course and they can figure it out. Like that's where you're going to, probably eat your words on who you're hiring.
Yeah. That's good wisdom. So moving on to the big question, how do you integrate strategy into the content to actually generate leads and not just traffic? But at the end of the day, obviously, it's all about conversion, right? Whether it's a conversion to a lead, a download, signing up for a newsletter, or buying a product, the goal is a conversion. So how do you integrate your strategy into ultimately getting that conversion?
Yeah, so there's two core parts, I would say. The first part is going to be within the strategy and the planning phase. And so a lot of that comes back to figuring out what the core topics are, or the primary keywords that you're going to set out to tackle, whether that's a title of an article or the title of a service page and a landing page, and then you're going to go from there. Once you've identified those keywords, you're going to likely sort them based on the funnel segments. So, bottom funnel, mid, top, all that sort of stuff, and then target high intent first and just strictly go after the best bang for your buck. Once that content is written and on your site, the next thing is going to be optimizing it for conversion. And this is where a lot of the CRO and UX stuff of the on-page SEO comes into play. So, for example, with all of our clients, we give them a free CRO and UX audit. And what this does is we run through every single page of their website and just say, here are the suggestions that we think would really benefit your site. And this is not something that we'll do. It's out of scope, but it's a free kind of audit to say, change this heading, change these colors, make a pop-up here, add a CTA here. And over time, you start to optimize your funnel above the fold or pop-ups if they're trying to leave, adding exit intent pop-ups, adding sidebar widgets, footer insertions, all of these little things that people really need in order to kind of drive and move the needle for conversion. But it's not just let it sit and let it do its job. Like it's a full-time job to ensure that once the people are on the site, what are you going to do in order to convert them through that funnel and close the deal?
Yeah, that makes sense. So because of your experience in the affiliate space, you guys have also worked on actual conversion and driving the clicks. So it sounds like you bring a lot of that expertise and insights and experience to your SEO clients, not just here's the content, good luck, but here's the content and here's where it's going to fit in the conversion funnel. And here's some ways to improve the engagement and the conversions, whether it be micro or macro conversions. Would that be accurate?
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, we always like to say, SEO is useless if it doesn't actually do anything for your business. So kind of like what you're saying, all of those arbitrary metrics and traffic, it's like, great, how much money are you making off this traffic? And if the answer is none, then you have something wrong with your process and your strategy. So once you have that traffic, that's getting the traffic is the hard part. Optimizing the traffic is the easy and fun part, I would say.
Extending from there, Steven, how do you form a content strategy? We talked about top funnel versus bottom funnel. We talked about driving conversions, engagement, leads, results. So when you look at a website and you're talking to let's say a new client, how are you going to form a content strategy looking at a new site with a new client and walk away with, here are the things we're going to do, execute, recommend, and create to drive that measurable lift in either be conversions, revenue, or both?
Yeah. So before we even sign a client, we always have a discovery audit. And this is just our way to do our due diligence and our homework before we set up any sort of agreement or strategy. And what we do when we walk through this discovery audit is kind of a preliminary strategy, or what we kind of look at as a phase one. So we do competitor research, and we take a look at the organic competitors within their space or any of the keywords that they would potentially want to go after, and just see how authoritative those competitors are, like how likely are you to kind of compete with them and just even enter the top 10 ranks for a given set of keywords. And then from there, we just take a look at what they're currently ranking for. And one, does it align with their brand? Sometimes we've done an audit and they have random content and it just doesn't make sense to the brand. And so kind of backtracking that and figuring out where does it actually make sense to go from here, and where do you kind of currently stand? And then taking that one step further, once we've done those two parts, we'll take a gap analysis approach and just say, where are the opportunities from here? And then kind of diving back to that funnel, we organize all of the opportunities based on top, mid, and bottom so that they can clearly see kind of what our approach would be, and then just kind of summarizing the notes and the findings. So that audit really helps us just determine, one, is it a good fit for us? And is this going to be a good relationship for the both of us to kind of set, our sights on? And then pretty much the strategy from there on out is just a more involved, going down the rabbit hole sort of approach of how many keywords can we find? What are the core pillars? Who are the core customers? What are they looking for? Just really kind of diving under the hood in terms of the psychology of their ideal customer and how they're thinking and what they're looking for.
Fantastic. So it sounds like you're taking a more custom approach.
Yeah, exactly.
How important are backlinks in that approach?
Very important. So we don't build any backlinks, like we'll offer advice, but during that process of kind of looking at the authority of the current or the new client and their competitors, we take a look at, do they actually have the backlink profile to compete within this space? And so if it's a little bit more competitive out the gate, we think that, they're out of reach or they're right on the cusp. We'll tell them straight up, like, hey, this might not be a good fit for you at this time, but if you're willing to invest, some time and energy into building those backlinks, we can also do our work and we kind of hit the ground running together. But typically it's a lot easier said than done. And so if people don't have the time or resources to devote into building backlinks, then they're kind of at an uphill battle with getting the content on their site and just being realistic with the expectations that it could just take longer to rank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sure the goal is to create backlink worthy content though, right? So infographics, micrographics, original data, research, original content, approaches, strategies to the content so that it is backlink worthy. Would that be fair?
Definitely. Obviously quality is always the name of the game, but just with how SEO is shaping nowadays, I think that it's very difficult to get those organic backlinks just strictly through having good content. Like, I wish that was still the case, but it's just not. People are really only linking to external resources that move the needle for the authority. So it's going to be like journals or statistical research from some sort of white paper or Forbes or New York Times, like things that actually have a lot of authority because Google trusts those. And so, it's definitely this uphill battle, but there's still some tricks to getting some good links, I would say.
All right. What's the best piece of advice you can give to someone considering doing SEO for their site?
I would say just be realistic in the timeline at which you're looking at. Whatever it is, probably 2 or 3x the results and what you're thinking. So, we always say expect some sort of movement within 60 to 90 days of our strategy, but don't expect to start generating a ton of money or a ton of top line revenue from that. So, obviously SEO is a game of delayed gratification. And so with that, the more time and resources and energy you put into SEO, it kind of has this compounding snowball effect. So you might have this really slow uphill tick for the first 6 to 9 months, but look back 12, 16, 18 months later, and it kind of starts to do this 2, 3, 4, 6x approach. And you look back 2, 3 years later and you're like, wow, I'm so glad I started what I did. But if you're just going into it saying like, let's see what we can do in 60 days and just leave it at that, I don't think you're really setting yourself or your brand up for success that way.
Yeah.
So how do you convince clients to play the long game?
That's a good question. That's a very hard one. We typically don't work with people who have a short-term mindset. So we're just straight up with them and say like, people come to us and they're like, yeah, let's see what we can do from 30 days. And we're like, this isn't going to work because that's not the game. You just have to have a long-term mindset and you have to be willing to invest in it and look at it as an investment. It's still insanely ROI positive if you look over a 12 to 24 month period. But I always like to tell people, you didn't get into business to get short-term results. You're in business because you're looking at a 5-10 year plus investment in your business. And so if that is the mindset and the theory, there's no difference here. And so usually that, vets people pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always the tough part because people even say, yeah, I'm in it for the long term. 6 months later, I'm done. Right. Because they just want to see that ROI, even though they mentally stated from the beginning, I get it. It's a long play, but man, is it tough to stay in it for the long play.
And that's also why we go after high intent bottom funnel stuff first, because, if you went after top of funnel stuff that wasn't really aligned with conversion, then people would obviously be turned off from it. But if you can kind of get a couple of wins under your belt within those first 6 months, then there's a little bit more buy-in to continue on for the next 6 months, and you kind of just rinse and repeat. So we also work in 90-day sprints with our clients in the strategy. So every 90 days, we'll work with them on a revamped strategy just to ensure that, goals and incentives are aligned and actually going after the best content possible. And so that really helps just to ensure that we're not, out of sight, out of mind for 6 months. It's like, no, we're very engaged. It's a very collaborative process, and both teams are aligned to kind of push through to the finish line.
Yeah, makes sense. So what are some of those for an e-commerce website specifically? What is some of that bottom funnel content where you can show a relatively quick ROI so that people can justify the long-term investment and stay with it?
Yeah, so that really comes down to the topic. I mean, every niche has its own bottom funnel content, but it's really going to be, like anything that has to do with costs or sizing or shipping, or like anything that has state or city requirements in it, like things that are more closely aligned with where they get to use or feel and interact with the end product or service. And so, especially with e-commerce, if they don't have a handful of landing pages, it's like, okay, let's immediately just create these landing pages, get that set, create service or category pages, hub pages, all of the things that are closely aligned to all of the, I guess, the core nuts and bolts of that search intent, and just making sure that everything is, highly focused from the get-go. Because more common than not, they might have a lot of product on their site, but they're just missing a handful of keywords that are kind of wrangling up those categories to kind of focus content together. So, yeah, I mean, and blog content's the same way. It's like, where do we look at the human psychology and the search intent, and then how do we kind of like work backwards to ensure that if you're on this article, it makes sense to focus a product or focus a call to action, et cetera, et cetera.
Question about pricing. This is a curveball because it's not one of the questions that we had on the list, but
Ready? Let's go.
Like SEO seems to have a perceived high price tag on it. What would you say, like, if a company wanted to really have a strong SEO strategy, like what would you say like that price range would typically be for them to pull it off?
Yeah, so our packages range anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 per month, depending on the number of pieces of content that you're getting. And that's, obviously strategized within like anywhere from 7 to 15 articles per month, depending on what is great for your resources. I would say always invest more in SEO than you think. If you're going after those $5 $100 SEO packages, like, you should probably be ready for that not to work out. One of the things that's always kind of like hung true with me is that if you think it's expensive to hire an expert SEO, wait until you hire an amateur, because you're gonna have to probably do it 5 times over again. What you're really paying for at the end of the day is the experience. Kind of going back to my story and Nathan and Connor's story, it's like we've been there, scaled that before. You're paying for the 10 years of experience so that we can do this in 30 days for your site, month 1. Most people kind of overlook the amount of time and all the testing and the failures that we've gone through in order to get to where we are, so that we can pretty much fast track this, hit the ground running, hit content, and just pretty much 90-day sprint anywhere from, 14, 15, 30 pieces of content, and have trust that it's going to be on the right path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you guys just do the content side. You don't obviously do link building, which we talked about. You don't do the technical side, but you do create content, engaging, converting content, and you do work with conversion rate optimization. If somebody needs technical help, they've got some big technical issues and or link building, do you recommend other people, or do you just kind of say, good luck, we don't do that? How do you handle those issues?
Yeah, so we also cover like on-page and internal linking. So we do a little bit more than just content. But if people are looking for, say, hey, when there's a backlink strategy or whatever it is, we have a couple things like under our belt in terms of like processes for outreach so that they can do it. But we don't really suggest going to a link building agency where you're going to like buy random links on the web. We're looking for partners who have trusted link building processes that they can roll out. And I definitely think that we have a couple of processes that we're going to look to integrate into years 2, 3 as like add-on services. But technical being one of them too. But being that it's still year one for Trio SEO, we just really wanted to hone in on the process of creating quality content at scale, and then kind of go back to all of our, tips and tricks we have between the three of us and kind of see how can we roll these out in a service or package add-on that makes sense for clients.
If somebody does play the long game, they're an ideal client for you. We're looking, say, two-year relationship plus, right? What does success look like over the first 2 years to you?
I think success boils down to, one, the fact that they have a steady stream of sales through their content or just through organic search, and they can at least justify the pillar of organic search as part of their marketing umbrella. I think so common than not, people look to PPC and look at ads and all that sort of stuff, and dumping money into ads, and that works so well because of the quick win result. But obviously, at the end of the day, if you're going to look at SEO as a win within your own company, it should have some sort of consistency built into where those sales are being generated, and then also kind of looking at sure that the relationship side of it from our end is more collaborative. So we almost want to be viewed as like a fractional SEO wing or extension of your company, and someone that you can come to when it comes to asking questions about new content or strategies, and just kind of like make it a two-way street. We're not one of those companies and agencies that, strictly no communication, we'll see you in 6 months, hope it works out. Like, we send weekly updates every, Wednesday via email. We send monthly reports. We're always available within 24 hours via email. Like, we're very hands-on in that process. And so I hope that, at the end of the day, they can deem success as also having a trusted partner as their SEO division, not only just aside from revenue and ROI.
So you're looking at a new client or prospective client, and it's an e-commerce website. What are the top 3 things you're going to look at or look for to determine the strategy, the goals, and whether or not it's even going to work for them and if you're going to be a good fit?
Yeah. So first off, I'm looking at their authority in the space and just kind of, what do they bring to the table from their backlink profile? And who are their competitors? Like, what are the high level categories that they're trying to rank for? E-commerce is a really interesting SEO space because there's a lot of opportunity between the categories or like the hub pages that you would typically try to rank a group of products for. But there's also a lot of like long tail keyword opportunity within the products themselves. And so, one, just are they hitting the marks on the high intent kind of long tail keywords that are easily attached to revenue? And then the other side is how can they capture the wins across the board for the broader parent topics that have a lot of traffic attached to them. So just quickly seeing like where they stand on those 2 core aspects, or like you can learn a lot from that. And then the other thing just ties back to CRO, UX, like, does their site look like it was built in 1997? That's probably a big red flag. Do they have all these like standard CTAs and like EAT metrics that we look at? Any way we can build in a quick wins for clients and just help them, turn their site around within 30 days is a win for them and a win for us. And then obviously the last part would just be how much runway they have and how much we can quickly tack on the site to ensure that they're still seeing success, month over month.
Great. So in those scenarios, would you have a fee for services where you can go in and provide a real assessment of their content strategy, their keywords, their opportunities for the keywords that they're missing, the gap analysis, and provide a valuable report pre-engagement, or let's say they don't want to engage, they just want you to come in and kind of give them a health report and prioritize what they need to do before they actually decide to engage?
Yeah, so that kind of ties back to that discovery audit. It's a multi-page, pretty fleshed out report. And we just kind of run through that. It takes one of our, depending on who's doing it, it takes anywhere from, 2 to 3 hours to do. So it's definitely not a quick, snapshot of their site. Like, we're actually doing our homework and, going through all the nuts and bolts. And then we send that to them and they can kind of decide where it sits. Like, that's theirs to keep. We don't do one-off strategies. It's something that we're on the fence about and kind of thinking through, because we've had some interest with a couple of people reaching out to us. So I don't want to say it's not off our ideas, or, it could happen very easily. But like I said, we can offer all the suggestions in the world. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So we've learned that if someone's coming to us asking for an audit, they typically don't have the team or resources and strategy in place to see it through. That's why they came to us to begin with. And so sure, you can have the audit. There's, a handful of free keywords. Here's all this opportunity. But just like when you create a course or do anything, actually seeing it through to the finish line is kind of where that, magic secret sauce starts to flourish and you start to see the results.
All right. $1 million question. We ask every guest at the end of the podcast, as an expert in your industry, what's one actionable strategy that you think would have the biggest impact for an e-commerce brand in SEO?
I think the biggest actionable piece of advice I would give is to sign up for a legit keyword tool, not ChatGPT. So use something like Ahrefs or SEMrush and get your hands dirty. If you're just strictly trying to cut corners and go to ChatGPT, like that's not real keyword research. The benefit of learning one of those tools is that you can cut out someone like me who's been using it for 10 years and, kind of trying to figure out yourself. But you can look at competitor information. You can look at link building strategies and metrics. You can look at keyword opportunities. Like there's so much within that tool, and just spending an hour or two per day can get you pretty far. So I'm always one of those people, like if you're going to do something, action's always better than just reading about it or reading an article. Like sign up, you get a 7-day trial on most platforms and like see what you can do. Like run a free audit report on your own website, see where your broken links are, see where your backlinks aren't, look at the keyword opportunities. Like if you're interested in SEO but don't have the funds or are still on the fence about it to invest in an agency like us, see how far you can get by yourself. And at some point you can always come to us for the rest. But I think you'd be surprised by how little effort it takes to make some quick wins on your own site.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said. Thank you. So we did say that you had some special offers and opportunities. So we'll put the links in the show notes, but tell us about the free SEO SOP toolkit. What's that about, and why would somebody want that?
Yeah, so this is something that we put together when we first launched. We're actually in the process of revamping it. So anybody who downloads the current version will also get the updated version. But myself and my partner, Connor Gillivan, who's also a top SEO, we are very active on LinkedIn. And so the first gen version of the SOP download is a roundup of all of our favorite LinkedIn posts. They're going to be very actionable, very DIY focused, and things that you can actually learn from within our content. And then what we're doing now is actually taking the real life legit SOPs that we use to run TrioSEO, and we're giving them to people for free. So we're going to round up the ones that are the most impactful and the most meaningful to try to learn this themselves and then give them away for free. So if that's of interest, or you feel like you want to DIY some of your SEO, that's where to go.
Fantastic.
And for those that don't know, what's an SOP?
SOP is a standard operating procedure. So it's very much a step-by-step process or some sort of guide on how to do some sort of task.
Your methodology, basically.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. And then you also have 3 free articles for anybody that mentions this podcast and engages your agency. How does that work?
Yeah. So pretty much if you come to us and just say, hey, I heard at you and loved what you're doing, we'll give you 3 free articles or service pages, just 3 free pieces of content pretty much. And that allows you to kind of hit the ground running and fast track your journey a little bit faster and just kind of set your site up for success that much sooner.
Fantastic.
So you're going to create 3 articles for them?
I will. Our team will. I'm not gonna. But yeah. So I mean, yeah. If we want to, we'll throw those in as 3 pieces of content on top of your package.
That's cool.
Great.
Yeah.
So what's the best way for our audience to get in touch with your firm?
Yeah. So you can go to trioseo.com and look us up. You could also just Google Trio SEO. We'll come up some way, shape, or form. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active, Steven Schneider. And yeah, any way you look for us, you'll probably find us.
Fantastic. Well, we really appreciate your time and all of your wisdom, sharing your history, your strategies, the gotchas, what to do, what not to do. I'm sure our audience will find it very, very helpful. And until next time, have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So nice.